Hello everyone. Today we will see the difference between simple, compound, complex and compound complex sentences. Before moving on to the main lecture, let's have a quick look of what is a clause, what is an independent clause and what is a dependent clause. If you already know the difference, you can skip this part and move on to the main lecture which will start with simple sentences. So basically clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb, while independent clause is a clause with a subject and a verb. It expresses a complete thought and it can form a complete sentence independently. It means it can make a meaning on its own alone. While a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a complete sentence and it needs an independent clause. It means dependent clause cannot work alone and it needs an independent clause to complete its meaning. If you want to know the difference between independent and dependent clause in detail, I am sharing the link from the top. Do check it out. Let us start with what is a simple sentence first of all. A simple sentence contains one independent or main or principal clause. Independent clause is also called the main clause or the principal clause. So simple sentences only have one clause, which is the independent clause. They gave me all the leftovers. This sentence has one subject they and one verb gave, and it is an independent clause because it makes a complete meaning. Similarly, she doesn't have to be this rude. This sentence also contains one clause. One clause means it has one subject she, it has one verb have, and it is an example of a simple sentence. Moving on to the compound sentences. Compound sentences contain two or more independent clauses. A simple sentence had one independent clause, while a compound sentence has two or more than two independent clauses, and these independent clauses are separated by coordinating conjunctions. The major coordinating conjunctions are fan voice, where F stands for, A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S for so, or they are separated by a semicolon. It can also use a semicolon to connect two clauses where no conjunction is necessary. It means if you are not using a coordinating conjunction between two independent clauses, you can also separate the two clauses using a semicolon. For example, these are two sentences. I like to be here, I love their food. Let us try making these two sentences a compound sentence, and we will use a coordinating conjunction in between. So in order to convert these two sentences into a compound sentence, we can put I like to be here for I love their food. What we have done is we have put a coordinating conjunction for in between, and it has turned into a simple compound sentence. One sentence instead of two, and it is a compound sentence. This can also be done by using a semicolon, just like I explained. I like to be here, semicolon, I love their food. Let us see another example. I wasn't present yesterday, so I wasn't aware of the meeting. Here we have used a coordinating conjunction so. One thing you should keep in mind is that whenever you are using a coordinating conjunction to separate two independent clauses, there should be a comma before that, just like there is a comma before so. Another thing that you must notice is that whenever you make a compound sentence, make sure it has two subjects and two verbs. Just like the above sentence, it has two subjects, I in I wasn't present yesterday, and so I wasn't aware of the meeting. Here the subject is I again. So there are two subjects and there should be two verbs as well. In the first part it is present, in the second part it is aware. Now, the question is what happens in imperative sentences where there is no subject? In imperative sentences, we don't show the subject, it is basically hidden. So, in imperative sentences, we assume that we have a subject here. Give me the evidence or you will face consequences. The first part of this sentence, give me the evidence. This doesn't have a subject. It is an imperative sentence. So, we assume that the subject here is you. You give me the evidence or you will face the consequences. So in imperative sentences we just assume that we have a certain subject. It can be you, it can be she, it can be he, etc. Moving on to the complex sentences. A complex sentence is one independent clause and it has one or more dependent or subordinate clauses. The dependent clause is introduced by a subordinating conjunction. In compound sentences we used coordinating. Here we are going to start the dependent clause with the subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction can include because, although, since, if, until, after, before, while, as, unless, etc. Or your dependent clause can also begin with a relative pronoun such as that, which, who, whom, whichever, whoever, whomever, and whose. Like, before he is here, I'll be ready. This sentence has two clauses. The first, the green part, is a dependent clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction before, and the black part is the independent clause. So this is an example of a complex sentence. If you don't hurry, you'll miss the flight. The green part again is a dependent clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction if. So these two sentences have two clauses, one independent and one dependent. There is a small tip which I want to share with you. Do remember, your dependent clauses always begin with the subordinating conjunction, and these subordinating conjunction turn independent clauses into dependent clauses. It means the subordinating conjunction is a factor which can turn any clause into a dependent clause. You have to bring in the documents before the office closes. Moving on to the last kind of sentences, that is compound complex sentences. Compound complex sentences has two independent and one or more dependent clauses. So here you need to have two independent and one dependent or more than one dependent clauses. If you feel bad for yourself, we can go outside and we will go to your favorite place. This sentence has three clauses, two independent which are in green color and one dependent which is in black color. Although she was mad at me, she still managed to complete the project and she handed it over to me. Again, two independent clauses and one dependent clause.